Jimmy Hensley continues his streak of impressive runs at Martinsville by putting the Bojangles Ford 7th on the grid for the Haynes 500. In the early laps, he climbs to 6th, battling door-to-door with Davey Allison.
Jimmy Hensley trying to follow. That's 5th position. Hensley trying to gain 6th from Allison. They touch coming off corner number 2. And we watch from Hensley's car. He takes the spot from Davey.
It's almost impossible to pass on this racetrack and not make a little bit of contact.
He soon falls back with a push in the center of the corner, then later in the race picks up a miss in the engine. The Alan Kulwicki racing crew manages to fix both issues, but loses too much time, dropping him 5 laps down. This is still good enough to finish 13th. "I guess we had a pretty good day," he says after the race. "It was still rolling at the end." By this race, Felix Sabates is already quite close to selling Kulwicki's team, which he hopes to accomplish by June 1st. He has now been contacted by between 31 and 36 individuals. Most of them, Sabates remarks, are, quote, vultures trying to get something for nothing, but others are quite intriguing. Mark Rippon, the Super Bowl winning quarterback of the Washington Redskins, is already fielding a Busch Series car for Chad Little. Buying the team would give Little a chance at returning to Winston Cup. Then there is golfer Payne Stewart, who heads a group along with LA Dodgers pitcher Oral Hershiser and a yet unnamed country music star believed to be Travis Tritt. Stewart is represented by the Leader Group, business advisors from Orlando. Among Leader's other clients is Coach Joe Gibbs, who in 1992 invited Stewart to watch his brand new team make its Winston Cup debut. According to Gibbs' publicist, Larry Camp, Stewart was, quote, like a kid in a candy store during the race. During the Shell Houston Open, Stewart says buying the team is an option he was considering, but says little more. Finally, there remain the top contenders, active Winston Cup drivers looking to start their own teams. Ricky Rudd had already pulled out after Hooters ended their sponsorship, and now both Bill Elliott and Ken Schrader deny that they ever made any offers. Schrader's name came out of the rumor mill at North Wilkesboro, and the veteran says he's already agreed to a new 3-year contract with Rick Hendrick. Brett Bodine, who has been driving for Kenny Bernstein's team on a year-by-year basis, remains interested and wants a complete inventory taken of Kulwicki's equipment before he moves forward. But soon Brett steps aside when he learns his older brother Geoff also wants it. Just like that, the eldest Bodine becomes the frontrunner. In 1993, Geoff Bodine is in his second year driving for Budmore Engineering in the number 15 Motorcraft Ford. He began the season with a third-place finish in the Daytona 500, and heading into Bristol remained a solid third in the point standings. But during his entire time driving for Moore, Bodine has been thinking about starting his own team. An article published February 7, 1993 confirms this. According to Sabates, he had already spoken with both Kulwicki and Darrell Waltrip to learn the pros and cons of life as an owner-driver. He'd even locked down a sponsor. After Kulwicki's death, Bodine fast-tracks these plans and gets in touch with Sabates. On April 22nd, Bodine visits the Kulwicki shop, then meets with Gerald Kulwicki, Don Hawk, Cal Lawson, and Sabates. It's his first real contact with the team. After 5 hours, the group feels good about Bodine becoming the new team owner. Bodine doesn't even mind that his home in Julian is 80 miles from the shop. Sabates says the only determining factor is how much money he'll put forward. Payne Stewart then skips the Greater Greensboro Open to make his own visit on April 23rd. According to Sabates, Stewart is okay with keeping Jimmy Hensley as driver, perhaps even into 1994, but it's not yet known how much his group will bid. On April 26, Dale Earnhardt is named Kulwicki's replacement for the remaining 2 rounds of the International Race of Champions. Earnhardt and Rusty Wallace had already been called upon in the previous round at Darlington to take the place of Al Unser Jr. and Arie Luyendyk, both due to minor injuries suffered while testing their Indy cars. This time around, Earnhardt requests the car bear Kulwicki's name, that the driver be credited with points posthumously, and that the winnings be donated to Kulwicki's favorite charities. In that race at Talladega, Earnhardt finishes 3rd, moving Kulwicki to 5th in the IROC standings, now led by Davey Allison. I've always said it's an honor to be asked to drive an IROC, and I know Alan felt the same way, says Earnhardt. This is for Alan. Also competing at Talladega is the ARCA Hooters Supercar Series, where Loy Allen Jr. wins the pole in the Hooters Ford fielded by his father. Allen leads 37 of 117 laps, only to finish second to Tim Steele. As for the Cup race, the Winston 500 will mark the third and final time Bojangles sponsors Jimmy Hensley. Despite a successful test, the car is sluggish in qualifying, taking 29th on the grid. That's the slowest lap we've run since we unloaded, says Hensley. We were just slow. It didn't want to pull any RPMs at all. In the race, Hensley remains on the lead lap and is saved by a caution at the very moment both his right side tires are going down. He limps to pit road on the inner liners. This allows Hensley to remain among the leaders for the final 2-lap sprint to the finish.
Here they come.
Urban really Earnhardt is off pace. He might be running low in gas.
Dale Jarrett trying to get through. He's moved into a battle for third position.
Earnhardt apparently is running out of gas in the turn.
He shuffled way back. Here they come off the fourth corner. Ernie Irvan leads them down now. Is he going to win the Winston 500? Jimmy Spencer is second. They come through the tri-oval. Checkered is waving. Ernie Irvan wins, and Rusty spins and gets airborne and flips wildly right at the start-finish line, very reminiscent of his accident at Daytona.
As Wallace sails across the finish line, Hensley finishes in 10th, his first top 10 finish since joining the team. But he could have finished even better, at least according to the driver. They were 3 wide going into turn 3, and I made it 4 wide on the outside, trying not to lift, but I got bogged down there in the tri-oval, and a couple of them got by me. Heading into the Talladega weekend, news breaks that Geoff Bodine has made a purchase offer to Sabatas, and that he'll take over the team as soon as the following week. He has made an offer, and it is a very fair one, says Sabatas. I think we will be able to reach an agreement. The next day, on May 3rd, Greg Moore, the spokesman for Bud Moore Engineering, confirms that Bodine will not return to their team in 1994. Due to all the speculation and stuff about Geoff buying the Kulwicki team, we're going ahead and not including him in our plans for 1994, he says. We are talking to some drivers, one of whom we are very excited about. This turns attention back to Payne Stewart, who Sabatas gives until 6 p.m. on May 4th for he or anyone else to make bids of their own. The deadline comes and goes, so at 5:41 p.m. on Friday, May 8th, Gerald Kulwicki formally accepts Bodine's bid. And with the Winston Cup Series off for the weekend, a press conference is now set for the next Wednesday, May 12th. That day, the Beach Boys' I Get Around blares through the Kulwicki shop as Geoff Bodine and his wife Kathy roll into the garage behind the wheel of a fire-engine red 1934 Ford Coupe. We all know golfers can't drive race cars, Geoff says, poking fun at Stewart. As the two stand in front of one of Hensley's cars, the press notices Geoff is wearing a baseball cap with a logo for the Family Channel. This cable network, which has also sponsored blimps for some of the season's broadcasts, was the company Bodine had reeled in while planning to start his own team before Kulwicki's accident. His first announcement is that the Family Channel will sponsor the number 7 for the upcoming weekend's race in Sears Point. We've been talking to them about plans for me in the future, says Bodine of the network. This opportunity came along, and they decided to take advantage of it. The Family Channel hasn't signed for all the remaining races, nor has it discussed plans for 1994. In fact, sponsors are still needed for the following month's races in Dover and Michigan. As condition of the deal, Bodine will operate the team for the rest of 1993 and then take over as owner sometime during the off-season when all legalities of the transfer have been settled. I'll play as active a role as I can this year, he says, but they have leadership. I give the team stability. We'll get through this year, and then I'll be their driver. This will prove even more challenging, as Bodine chooses to honor the rest of his lame duck contract with Bud Moore for the remainder of the 1993 season. This is good news for Jimmy Hensley, who will now stay in the number 7 until Bodine takes over in 94. Jimmy Hensley is totally the opposite of Allen, says team manager Chris Lawson. It's really been a welcome relief, his low-key attitude during the stress of the transition. By the beginning of next year, we'll be ready to go after it again. Most critically, Bodine will keep Kulwicki's team together, including Paul Andrews as crew chief and Don Hawk as business manager. The Alan Kulwicki Racing branding will also stay until 1994, when the team will officially become Geoff Bodine Racing. Even then, the team will still campaign the number 7 Ford. We feel Alan would be pleased with this decision, us taking over the team, says Bodine. We wish this opportunity never came along, but we put the deal together, and we think it's a good one for everyone. We don't know what we're going to call this team, but I can assure you that Alan will always be a part of it. We don't want to change that. According to Bodine's new autobiography, All of It, co-written by Dominic Aragon, Bodine even leaves Kulwicki's office, just as he left it in April. That said, there will still be changes. I don't ever want to take Kulwicki's stamp away from this team, he says. But when the season ends, it will be Geoff Bodine Racing, not AK Racing, not Alan Kulwicki Racing. That's the way it has to be. As part of the transition, Bodine arranges to have the Kulwicki Racing sign in front of the shop donated to a museum that is taking shape in Milwaukee. With the team now in hand, Bodine also looks to help his own family's racing ambitions. He hasn't ruled out letting his brother Todd Bodine drive, or perhaps, once they're old enough, his sons Matt and Barry, who were 21 and 15 at the time. Bodine makes clear, however, that he didn't have to touch his family's savings to do this. I didn't have to jeopardize Kathy or any of these guys' future, he says. I wouldn't have done that. The crew is enthusiastic. Geoff has natural leadership ability, says Cal Lawson. He is just a natural fit to come right in and take over and make us feel at home. Alan was a high-pressure, highly technical, self-motivated person, and I believe Geoff possesses a lot of those same qualities. And he also has the ability to set up a race car and tell us exactly what he wants done. We want to say thanks, says Don Hawk. We were like a family without a father and mother for a few weeks here. Also prior to Talladega, a deal was struck to have road course specialist Tommy Kendall drive the number 7 at Sears Point, with Hensley returning for the following 2 weekends in Charlotte. According to Winston Cup's scene, Hensley didn't mind the change, and according to Sabatas, he welcomed it. Kendall ran the last 2 Cup races in Sonoma with support from Sabatas, but this year will mark his first time driving a Ford Thunderbird. This will be well timed, as on the IMSA circuit, Kendall now drives Jack Roush's GTS Mustang Cobra. Even so, Kendall needs to get permission from Roush to accept the ride. Recalling the 1991 race, when he spun Mark Martin in a late race battle for the lead, Kendall says, I think Roush knows that I will race just as hard against Mark Martin and Wally Dallenbach as I will against everyone else. At the time of the deal, the Kulwicki team had no sponsor in place for Kendall. Instead, Sabatas had agreed to co-fund the effort with Roger Penske. That changed when Geoff Bodine acquired the team and installed the Family Channel as sponsor. The weekend gets off to a bad start. In qualifying, Kendall gets off course in turn 10 and smashes head-on into the tire barrier. The impact is so hard that his chest bounces off the steering wheel enough to bend the wheel, sending Kendall to the hospital for x-rays. As Kendall is checked and later released, the team flies in Jimmy Hensley to stand by as a relief driver. With help from both the Penske and Wood Brothers crews, the team prepares their backup car, the Ford with which Kulwicki finished 14th in the 1992 race at Sears Point. Penske's guys install the exhaust headers and decal the car. The Wood Brothers team put in the engine and transmission, and Paul Andrews consults Alan Kulwicki's notes from the 1992 race. The crew has nearly all Kulwicki's notes still on hand, even Indianapolis, where he participated in testing. The only ones missing are for New Hampshire, where the series is yet to run or test, and for Bristol, which were lost in the plane crash. The group finishes work at 7:45 p.m. They offer to take the other 2 teams to dinner, but they decline. The car is ready in time for Hensley to get some practice laps before the race. At the time, the infield at Sears Point includes a path that runs by the chain-link fence in front of the Winston Cup haulers. During the weekend, someone leaves a pot of purple flowers in front of the number 7 team's truck. The arrangement includes a photo of Kulwicki with a note card that reads, God bless AK Racing. We miss you, Alan. R.I.P. The McDonald's, Portland, Oregon. Kendall is cleared to race Kulwicki's car and remarks on the lost champion, who he'd known through his work with Sabatas. One quality I always admired was that he was methodical and thought about things. He tried to outthink the next guy, and that's one of the reasons he was so successful. On Sunday, Kendall takes the green flag in 33rd position, and despite a hitch in the throttle, climbs to 15th on lap 33. He has trouble getting traction off the corner, particularly at turn 7. Then an ill-timed caution caused by West Series driver Jeff Davis places him on the tail end of the lead lap for the lap 53 restart. This places Kendall in front of race leader Dale Earnhardt and the bumper of Derek Cope.
Oh, and Kendall spins right in front. Oh, and collects Earnhardt. Can you believe that?
Man, oh man. And Kendall is sitting there facing all the oncoming traffic, and so far, looks like everyone except it's Kenny Wallace. And look at the damage on Earnhardt's car.
The race leader who was looking for his first road course win here today and had almost, you could say, dominated this event, has severe right side damage on the front of the car.
The damage to Earnhardt's car cost him the win and continues Kendall's struggles. It was a long day, says Kendall, who finishes 22nd. When the tires got old, you had to wait until you almost straightened up out of the corner before you got past that hitch. It seemed to go away at the end, but by then we had gotten out of sequence on pit stops trying to save track position and had gotten a lap down on one caution. Still, Kendall has all but secured the number 7 ride for the season's other road course race in Watkins Glen. Back up front in his first race since purchasing Kulwicki's team, Geoff Bodine finds himself in a tight battle for the lead.
We have seen some unbelievable finishes here at Sears points in the years past, and I have a feeling we're going to see it. Oh, and Geoff Bodine! Oh, he saved it, but I think he's going to lose the lead. Here comes Urban alongside him. They bump, and Urban has the lead.
Maybe he hit some debris or a little dirt that was kicked out on the racetrack there.
And Raad is going to try to outbrake Geoff Bodine. Bodine trying to outbrake Ernie Irvin. So now what's going to happen?
Bodine is going to get the lead back. That's what's going to happen.
And here comes Raad going to try to take the lead back from Bodine, Bob.
It's Bodine as they come in front of me. Raad second and Irvin third.
Car is and Geoff Bodine is sideways and saves it. Now here comes Raad on the, well, he blocks that move.
Cannot make the pass. Geoff Bodine was totally sideways and saved it.
Geoff Bodine on the brakes hard. Ernie Irvin trying to close, but not being able to make much of a move. Bodine slipped a little high, but I think he's going to make it back to you, Bob.
I think he's going to make it. Here he comes. Bodine with about a 5-car length advantage. Geoff Bodine wins. Ernie Irvin finishes second, then Ricky Rudd, Ken Schrader, and Kyle Petty.
Bodine takes the checkered flag, his first win of the season, and first on a road course since 1984 at Riverside. On the cool-down lap, Bodine turns around at the starting line and does a brief Polish victory lap to turn 11. He then makes his way to victory lane.
First of all, congratulations on what had to be an emotional win for you.
It really is, Jerry. For Kathy and I both. Yeah, there's tears in the eyes right now. Alan, this is for you. I guess everyone knows Kathy and I just bought that team here last week, and well, sure was going to feel good if we could have won the first time out as being a car owner. And here at Sears Point, it's really special to us. It's all for Alan and that team. We're looking forward to next year, but you know, we're with a pretty good team right this year. Bud Moore, hi Bud, you're back home. Matt and Barry, love you guys. Bud, when you're not here, we win. What's going on? We wish you were here, though, Bud. Hope everything's okay, but a great car today. Can you believe how this thing handled? In long runs, it just kept getting faster and faster when everyone else slowed down, but just want to thank Motorcraft, Igloo, Ford. Is this the first win for Ford this year, maybe? I don't know. And the Family Channel, thanks for sponsoring the number 7 car. Hopefully that'll be a long relationship with those folks, but just a super day here, a beautiful day. Hope everybody enjoyed it.
At the time Geoff Bodine bought Kulwicki's team, the number 7 still had no sponsorship for both the Winston and the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte. Dick Campbell at Bojangles no longer had enough sponsorship funds available, but still told the team to call him just in case. Sabatas was also contacted by First Union Bank, the sponsor of the spring race at North Wilkesboro, which offered to back the number 7 if no one else was available. But just before Sonoma, someone did sign with the team. In 1989, the Sara Lee Corporation had acquired longtime Martinsville sponsor Pennell Knitting Company, which joined forces with another of Sara Lee's subsidiaries, Haynes. Haynes had since replaced Pennell as sponsor of the spring Martinsville race, and by now had joined forces with Motorsport Traditions to produce licensed NASCAR shirts and other clothing. With that, Haynes becomes Hensley's sponsor for both races in Charlotte, with Motorsport Traditions as an associate. Both Hensley and Bodine are automatic entries in the All-Star main event, the Winston, Hensley in place of Kulwicki for his championship and race wins. In the debut of the Haynes car during qualifying, Hensley spins off turn 4 before taking the green flag, leaving him 15th on the grid. It got loose on the first lap, and I just looped around, he says. After I spun, there wasn't much point in finishing the lap. In the early laps of the All-Star race, Hensley remains mired in the back of the pack, stuck in the outside lane until he drops to last place on lap 6. He does pass Dale Jarrett, who is fighting a loose condition, and gains a couple more spots by the end of the first 30-lap segment. The field inversion puts him 5th on the grid for segment 2, which is exactly the wrong place to be just 2 laps later.
Bristol. Oh, trouble. Mike Waltrip up in the wall. He got a piece of Jimmy Hensley. And we've seen some real fireworks.
Hensley seems to clear the wreck at first, but comes to pit road with heavy right side damage. It's enough to end their night.
We've been watching those few replays. How do you recall it, and what happened to you?
Well, pretty much like that showed on TV right there. Michael got nudged a little bit and got out of shape, and I just barely grazed him, kind of stayed under him, and then Dale got hit and then got up into me and turned me around and put me up in the wall.
How bad is this race car? Well, here's the replay, Jimmy, again from the Skycam.
Yeah, I thought it was okay to right here. So I thought it was okay till that happened, but that's the way it goes.
Well, you got to get this car ready. You're bringing it back for the 600. How bad is it?
Well, we discussed. We never really got the car really set like we wanted to today. We tested another car here. It felt a little better, so we'll probably bring it back next week for the 600.
Okay, but luckily you're okay.
Yeah, everything's okay.
Talented race driver with a tough job this season, Jimmy Hensley.
Before the Coca-Cola 600, where Hensley qualifies a strong 10th, the victims of the Hooters plane crash are honored by the Army's Golden Knights parachute team. Each member of the team carries a red flag with a white number 7 on it, flags which are distributed to the families of the lost. Hensley steers the Haynes car to a 15th place finish, 2 laps down, his 5th straight top 20 finish in as many starts with the team. The fundraising continues. Race fans Alan Thompson and John Roberson found the Alan Kulwicki Memorial Fund, which aims to place a bronze statue of Kulwicki in the International Motorsports Hall of Fame. Plans are made at UNC Charlotte to recognize Kulwicki's status as the first college-educated Winston Cup champion. By October, R.J. Reynolds will present UNCC Chancellor James Woodward with a $100,000 check establishing a 4-year scholarship set to begin in the fall of 1994. At the track, the Winston Cup Racing Wives Auxiliary sells Kulwicki souvenirs, with profits going to the fund. They impose a strict 5-item limit, and only cash is accepted. Just when they're about to sell out, Robert Brooks donates Hooters' remaining stock of Kulwicki sweatshirts, t-shirts, muscle tees, and trading cards to the auxiliary. The sales will continue into June. Before the crash, Kulwicki signed a licensing agreement with Bill Simpson to sell miniature novelty helmets for $50 apiece. Simpson nearly cancels the deal, but follows through. The profits go to help Kulwicki's team. For all the good that has been done, there's fraud and deception as well. Before Kulwicki's death, Gary L. McColgan allegedly sent a letter to the team asking for assigned merchandise he could auction off to benefit the Muscular Dystrophy Association. The team sent McColgan a signed hat and diecast, but after Kulwicki's death, McColgan allegedly decided not to forward them to the charity. He instead sells the diecast to a collectibles store near Tampa, then sells the hat to a man for $1,000. That man turns out to be an undercover police officer, who charges McColgan with grand theft and fraud. There are also unauthorized sales of photos of Kulwicki at his final autograph appearance in Knoxville, and a $6 diecast placed in a box that was then resold for $65. Don Hawk cautions fans not to buy counterfeit t-shirts. He says the only authorized shirts were made by Checkered Flag Sports, Motorsport Traditions, and at Hooters through T-Shirt Express. By July, Hawk will take on a more direct role in this effort and work with Gerald Kulwicki on a new merchandise licensing agreement. One of these agreements is with their next sponsors, Matchbox Toys and White Rose Collectibles. Prior to Kulwicki's death, his Hooters Ford was already in the company's Racing Superstars line of 1/64th scale diecasts, alongside Davey Allison, Ernie Irvin, and others. Now, after the accident, Matchbox is producing diecast of virtually every new paint scheme the number 7 runs. Also produced are the Bojangles car from North Wilkesboro and the Haynes car from Charlotte. Their competitors at Racing Champions will also produce both cars, plus Tommy Kendall's from Sears Point and a tribute car with Hensley's name, but without any sponsors. Matchbox and White Rose secured sponsorship during the series' 2 weeks at Charlotte. They will debut at a track where Alan Kulwicki struggled more than anywhere else during his championship season, the Monster Mile in Dover. We wrecked 2 cars in practice for the first race. The next time the throttle stuck and we wrecked another car, he said that January. We pulled the backup off the truck, won the pole, then wrecked that car in the race. Hensley qualifies 11th and nearly makes it the entire distance, even after he spins down the backstretch to avoid a pileup on lap 213. But in the final 70 laps, his luck runs out.
Oh, man. Oh, both
And Rusty cracks the wall hard. Keeps it down to the bottom of the racetrack. And Jimmy Hensley slides into the driver's door of Wallace's car, and Geoff Bodine piles in.
Boy, hopefully Rusty got that hand out of that thing, I'm telling you.
He got smacked 3 times.
I see him moving
And he's
around
undoing the window net with his right hand.
Yeah,
and climbing out.
Man, you hate to see it, but the first thing you think about Rusty doesn't need to re-injure that.
What a devastating crash.
With 13 of the 38 starters already out of the race, most due to other accidents, Hensley still manages to finish 22nd. Back on May 27th during the Charlotte race, the Kulwicki team also had no sponsor signed for the June race at Pocono, side of the driver's 5th and final career win. As the days tick by, Geoff Bodine uses this as the opportunity to promote his famous bobsled project with the U.S. Olympic team. The number 1-800 bobsled is placed on the car. But on June 9th at 6:45 p.m., representatives from Matchbox and White Rose called Don Hawk, saying they want to sponsor the number 7 again on Sunday. And so, with the bobsled logos still on the rear of the car, the result is still another design that Matchbox will mass produce. With all the different sponsors we've had, and we're gonna have, says Jimmy Hensley, maybe I need to get me a Velcro uniform, something I could put on and peel off very quick. After qualifying the car 18th on the grid, Hensley flies home on the team's charter plane. Karen, his oldest of 3 daughters, is graduating from Magna Vista High School. With that, Geoff Bodine climbs behind the wheel of the number 7 for the first time, clocking in some laps during the post-qualifying practice session. Hensley returns in time for happy hour, then finishes 17th in the race. With spots still open on the team's sponsorship calendar, Purolator does decide to step up their backing and become the primary sponsor in 3 races, starting with this June event at Michigan. The other 2 will be the inaugural New Hampshire event in July and the return to Pocono the following week, all in venues where the company has a large customer base. We hope we're doing our part to keep Alan's dream alive, says Roman E. Baruda, Purolator's chairman, president, and CEO. Just 7 months after their last time sponsoring Bob Whitcomb Racing, now closed, Purolator also marks their 20-year anniversary as a sponsor in NASCAR. In place of Whitcomb's rocket red Chevrolet, Hensley's white Ford is decorated with bold blue stripes. Matchbox doesn't produce the diecast, but Racing Champions does. After starting 26th, the caution falls just after Hensley makes a green flag stop. He finishes in 23rd, 3 laps down. When the series returns to Daytona, the Family Channel is again on the car. This time, the numbers are painted in a gradient shade from yellow to green, and Matchbox produces still another car. Hensley qualifies 19th for a slight improvement on his speed from Talladega, but his race gets off to the worst possible start.
Already a crash up in turn number 2. Car up against the wall. Everybody else gets by okay, but it is Jimmy Hensley in car number 7 who has made contact with the wall. The Family Channel for Thunderbird is against the wall in turn number 2 as the rest of the field comes down to the caution flag. Well, that didn't take long.
While repairs continue on Hensley's car, Geoff Bodine drops out on lap 30 with a blown engine on the Bud Moore car. When the number 7 returns to the track on lap 60, it is Bodine and not Hensley who is driving. These are the first laps Bodine has run in the number 7 since practice at Pocono, and his first in competition. He climbs from 41st and last to finish 34th before he too falls out. Taking home 29th is Loy Allen Jr., who is one of 61 entrants barely qualifies for his Winston Cup debut, taking 40th on the grid. Driving for his father's team in the number 37, Allen is sponsored by Naturally Fresh Foods, another subsidiary of Eastern Foods Incorporated that also owns Hooters restaurants. Prior to this, Naturally Fresh had prominent space on Kulwicki's number 7, placed on either side of the rear wheels in both 1992 and the first part of 93. In a July 2nd press conference, Allen says he plans to make another 4 Cup races in 1993, then at least 10 in 1994, by which point they'll have 6 cars in their shop. Through it all, Allen says he has no animosity over Hooters parting ways with the Kulwicki team. In fact, he clearly stands to gain from it. We have plans for him in the future, says Bob Brooks, which we are not at liberty to discuss at this time because they're incomplete. The next race sees a NASCAR Winston Cup Series make its first ever trip to the New Hampshire International Speedway for the Slick 50 300. Hensley in the Purolator car has one of his best overall performances so far. He qualifies 13th, and even after running over the piece of debris that draws the final caution, finishes 11th. It was a good racetrack, says Hensley, but it's a little slippery. The fans are really good, and I think they saw a real good show. It's tough to pass on this track right now, but I think these guys will get that figured out. This turns out to be one of the last races for Don Hawk, who is soon to be named general manager at Dale Earnhardt Incorporated, and it's the very last for Davey Allison, who leads 38 laps and finishes third. 2 days later, the driver fifth in points will succumb to injuries suffered in a helicopter accident in the Talladega infield. Just like Kulwicki's team, the Robert Yates Racing entry is withdrawn from that Sunday's race at Pocono. As the series mourns the loss of its second driver in just over 3 months, Hensley qualifies 6th in the Purolator car. This is tied for the team's best qualifying run of the season so far, matched by Kulwicki's own 6th-place start at Richmond. Unfortunately, the car soon plummets to 30th and is left running by itself. After 42 laps, Hensley pulls behind the wall with engine trouble and finishes 39th. According to a report from Johnny Hayes, in the 3 laps after Hensley reported trouble, the crew sold their 10 remaining sets of tires to other teams. The tires are gone by the time Hensley pulls into the garage. Next is the second race at Talladega, where the Family Channel returns as sponsor. Looking to back up his strong finish at the track in May, Hensley qualifies better this time, securing 19th on the grid. We're pretty happy with that lap, he says. It's the best we've run. We were good in practice, but you can't always tell how good, because on the fast laps a lot of times you're getting a tow from another car. We should end up in the top 15. We ran good here in May. We hope to again. The pre-race tributes to Davey Allison are followed by a particularly brutal 500 miles in unforgiving heat. At the start, both Hensley and Sterling Marlin find they are down on 7 cylinders, dropping them well back of the field. While Marlin has a loose plug wire, it takes at least 2 laps for Hensley's crew to discover the porcelain is cracked on one of his spark plugs. Well out of contention, Hensley finds himself in the middle of both the day's terrifying accidents. I've been close to a lot of things today, he says after. The wreck in number 1 corner, where Jimmy Horton flew over the wall, I went through a lot of stuff. As Neil Bonnet's accident unfolds, Hensley cuts hard to the left, sending him sliding through the infield grass. When Neil Bonnet got sideways, I don't know if he got touched or if the air got him up, but I went under him too. The Family Channel Ford has been in some tough spots today. We're trying to hang on and get the best finish we can. Hensley takes the checkered flag in 28th, 6 laps down. After Talladega comes another off weekend for the Winston Cup Series. On July 31st, Geoff Bodine takes his crew and their families on a team trip to Dollywood in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. Bodine is good friends with singer Tanya Tucker and arranges for his crew to be VIPs at her next concert. Tucker introduces the crew to the crowd and invites them backstage. In front of the Grand Hotel, Bodine has displayed a black-painted race car alongside a bobsled he designed, accompanied by Joe Huff, head of the U.S. Bobsled Project. Bodine takes Tucker for a ride, a moment he recalls vividly in his autobiography. After riding shotgun, Tucker asks to drive the car back to the park. When she does, she drives so fast and skillfully that it's the first time Bodine ever felt scared in his own car. The team returns to work at Watkins Glen, where Tommy Kendall will continue his role as road course ringer. Again, the team struggles in qualifying, starting 33rd, exactly where he rolled off in Sears Point. Carrying ESPN's foot cam, Kendall works his way through the field, but he then loses 3rd and 4th gear, forcing an unscheduled stop where he's also penalized 15 seconds for speeding. Kendall tries to go out again, but now has only 2nd gear, so he goes back behind the wall for further repairs. Paul Andrews and the crew still manage to get it fixed, and Kendall finishes on the track 5 laps down in 25th. Still another new paint scheme debuts in Michigan. Following its earlier appearance at Pocono in June, then the display at Dollywood in July, the U.S. Bobsled Project returns as listed sponsor. This car, too, is produced and die-cast by Matchbox. In Sunday's race, Hensley returns to his form from New Hampshire, qualifying 15th and finishing in that same spot, and on the lead lap. It's the team's first lead lap finish since Talladega in May. The next 2 days after Michigan, NASCAR invites the teams in the top 35 in the point standings to participate in a test at Indianapolis, preparing for the following season's inaugural Brickyard 400. Both Hensley and Bodine will test the number 7, likely the same car they ran in Michigan. The car now carries the phrase Miss Indianapolis over the quarter panels, as Tony George had just donated $200,000 to Bodine's bobsled building efforts. Team manager Cal Lawson notices a difference between their two drivers. Geoff is someone who knows what they want in a race car and will tell you exactly what they want. Jimmy was more the type of driver who would tell you what the car was doing rather than what to do to the car. Geoff is more of the engineering type. He'll tell what the car felt like to him and make suggestions on what to change on it. Bodine is first behind the wheel, and the crew works hard to make sure his is the first car on track. They succeed, and are also the first to cross the yard of bricks ahead of a fast-charging Dale Earnhardt. It was my first day on the job, so to speak, and I think it went pretty well, says Bodine. Those guys have been through a tremendous ordeal. They lost their friend, their driver, and their leader. They picked up and carried on in face of the adversities that can drag a team that is used to being competitive and winning into the ground. The Indy test just gave us all a taste of what is to come. Bodine is impressed with the car's speed. They rank 6th in the test with a best lap of 165.256 miles per hour. The spirit which won the Winston Cup Championship in 1992 didn't die on that hillside, says Bodine. Alan Kulwicki didn't win this championship all by himself. He won it with the dedication and determination of each of these fellas. All summer long, fans continue to visit Kulwicki's grave in Wisconsin. Among the many items left by fans is a small flag on which someone has written, "Please tell God to tell me why." At the crash site in Blountville, a circle of fresh grass has been placed over the point of impact, above which the faint scent of aircraft fuel still hangs in the air. The property is owned by resident Wanda Lambert and her family. "When I heard the plane, I knew it was in trouble," she says. "But then to realize there were 4 people dead over there, and there was nothing I could do, it was such a shock." As the investigation unfolded, police had a hard time keeping people away from the site. They still come, but the Lamberts don't mind. "We're not bothered by them, but they still come out and stop to look at it," she says. It's against this backdrop that the Winston Cup Series returns to Bristol for the first time since the crash. In accordance with Gerald Kulwicki's wishes, the track has no tributes planned for his son. For the 4th time in 1993, Hensley qualifies in the top 10, taking 9th on the grid for the Bud 500. He stays in the top 10 for the first 80 laps, then after a sequence of early pit stops finds his way back to 10th on lap 180. He remains there the rest of the night, and even outlasts some of his competitors in the final laps. He battles both Harry Gant and Rick Mast, then moves to 6th after Morgan Shepherd drops off the pace. Even after a close call, when Brett Bodine slows in front of him, he defends the spot all the way to the finish, crossing the line just behind 5th place Mast. "We ran pretty good, and I'm proud of the finish," says Hensley after the race. "I got awful tingly in my arms, and they just about went to sleep. That's why I fell back a little bit there. I didn't want to take any chances." In the final running order, Hensley finishes just ahead of Geoff Bodine. "Yeah, I hope Geoff doesn't fire me," he says. "I hope he's pleased we ran this well." "It's been difficult," says Paul Andrews. "A day doesn't go by that we don't think about Alan. But time really does heal, and it is a little easier as we go along. I think it's safe to say we're all glad to be back at Bristol and getting in a good run for Alan. Everyone feels pretty bad that we haven't done better until now, but to do well at Bristol or any of the other races would be a morale booster for sure." Heading into the Southern 500, Ernie Irvan parts ways with Morgan McClure Motorsports to take over the Robert Yates Ford formerly driven by Davey Allison. Irvan takes over for Lake Speed, who Yates had made his own temporary driver since Watkins Glen. Earlier in the 93 season, Speed pieced together a part-time schedule in his own number 83 Ford sponsored by Purex Detergent. He finished 14th in the Daytona 500 and earned a few strong qualifying runs before Yates brought him on board. According to USA Today, Speed is reported to take over for Geoff Bodine in Bud Moore's number 15 at Darlington, which will allow Bodine to run the number 7 in the final few races of 1993. While Irvin does indeed drive the number 28 at Darlington, Speed remains on the sidelines as Bodine runs for more and Hensley stays in the number 7. It will later be revealed that USA Today was correct, that Speed had been hired by Bud Moore on September 3rd, 2 days before the Southern 500. In the meantime, Hensley qualifies 26th for the race and finishes 6 laps down in 23rd, but he also manages to lead his first lap since joining the team, staying out during a competition caution on lap 32. In an article on September 7th, Bodine says he anticipates Hensley will perform well at the upcoming races at Martinsville, North Wilkesboro, Rockingham, and Richmond. In the meantime, Bodine remains more occupied with the team's day-to-day operations. The current fleet of cars includes just one new chassis, a car Kulwicki ordered prior to his death. Bodine orders another 3 cars and plans to sell off some of the older models as show cars. He also buys a new transporter, which he expects to receive in the next couple weeks. This would retire the truck Peter Gellin drove around that dark day at Bristol, which still bears the orange accents from the Hooters sponsorship. It's a lot of work, but Bodine is enjoying it. "I wish I'd done this a long time ago," he says. "I wish I'd pursued this back several years ago. It's a hard way to do it, but it'll work. It'll work." Another factor keeping Hensley in the number 7 is a new sponsor which enthusiastically decides to back him for the following race at Richmond. In August, Richmond-based telecommunications company Cellular One agrees to sponsor Hensley at their home track. "We saw this as the perfect way to develop a relationship with Winston Cup Racing and to provide continued support for the Alan Kulwicki race team," says Ben Holcomb, president of American Cellular Communications Corporation, owner and operator of Cellular One in Richmond. The black and red scheme is still another car produced by Matchbox, and Cellular One takes out an ad in the Richmond Times-Dispatch on August 30th. New subscribers to their cell phone service will receive a Jimmy's Number 1 shirt, and Hensley will sign autographs before the race. In the race, Hensley qualifies 19th and finishes 21st, 3 laps down. And despite the support of Cellular One, this turns out to be a one-race deal. Bodine, who finishes 34th that night, is still looking for that elusive sponsor for 1994. While Bodine downplays the sponsorship issue, and Ford hopes to wait until the end of the season to see if Bodine can finish top 10 in points for Bud Moore, Moore decides to part ways with Bodine on September 13th. In Bodine's place comes the already hired Lake Speed, securing the Mississippi driver the first full-time, fully sponsored ride that he's ever had in a career dating back to 1980. Moore says this makes the most sense for all parties involved. Bodine had scored just 2 top 10 finishes since his win at Sears Point, and he will now have the time he needs to land a sponsor for the number 7. Lee Morse, manager of performance operations for Ford's Special Vehicles wing, agrees, saying this will help 2 Ford teams instead of one at the expense of another. "The hardest thing I have to do is make the call to Jimmy Hensley," says Bodine, who picks up the phone that evening. "Jimmy Hensley has done a great job with the car, both on and off the racetrack," he says. "It was tough for me to call him Monday night and tell him he was let go. He definitely deserves an opportunity with someone, and I hope he gets that." Bodine continues to have kind words for Hensley in the days ahead. "One thing that needs to be said is what a good job Jimmy did with this team and the various sponsors that came on in different races this season," he says. "He might have a reputation as a country boy from Virginia, but he represents a race team very well, on the track and off. People need to know that." When the green flag flies for the next race in Dover, Hensley will be in church with his wife Becky and their 3 daughters. "It don't make me feel any better, but that's life," says Hensley, calm as ever. "I'm honored to have had that ride while I did. I knew when Geoff bought the cars and the shop and everything from Mr. Gerald Kulwicki that there was a possibility he'd make a move before the season was over and I'd be out. There was always that understanding. Geoff was upfront about it." Though he wants to stay in Cup, Hensley thinks about returning to the Busch Series. In the meantime, he'll continue driving his oil truck. "I've never quit that job," he says. "I've always held on to it, because I know how uncertain stock car racing can be." Back at the shop, Bodine prepares for Dover, but reminders of Kulwicki are still everywhere. As with the old hauler, his eyes are drawn to the equipment that's still painted in Hooters orange. "And that's a reminder, that orange," he says. "You know who drove the orange car. There's nothing wrong with that, though. It's good. It's a good memory. It's just a sad one." The car he sets up for Dover couldn't be more significant in this regard. It's chassis number 008, also known as the Underbird, the championship winner from Atlanta. "This car was one of Alan's favorites that were running here," he says. The car is repainted black and red, with the Family Channel as sponsor. Boy, we had to hustle, he says of the effort, not just to change seats and steering wheels and all that stuff, but to make other adjustments that suited me. We haven't caught up yet. It's going to take a while to get everything right. Even then, Bodine again insists that he's rejuvenated by the experience of operating his own team. I'm happy doing this, he says. It isn't a headache. It isn't sleepless nights. I sleep better now than I've ever slept. I'm really happy with this team and these people. This is fun. Life's too short not to have fun, and this is what I want to do. Bodine will still wear his motorcraft driver's uniform and helmet at Dover. On Tuesday, Bodine tests at Martinsville. He runs the fastest lap of the day, beating Mark Martin, Darrell Waltrip, Geoff Purvis, Bobby Labonte, and Phil Parsons. It doesn't feel any different, says Bodine. Well, it did the first lap around here. I did think about, this is my car. But once I get behind the steering wheel of a car, I always thought it was my car, no matter who owned it. Drove it like it was my car, treated it like it was my car. I'm going to drive it like I've driven everyone else's, as fast as it will go. Bodine's first official start in the number 7 will come in the very race that saw Alan Kulwicki begin his march to the 1992 NASCAR Winston Cup Championship, the race that saw him wreck 2 cars in a weekend. In his first laps at Dover, Bodine steers clear of danger, but is anything from conservative. He qualifies a strong 4th behind Rusty Wallace, Ernie Irvan, and Jeff Gordon. Lake Speed makes his first start for Bud Moore back in 25th. In the race, Bodine loses a lap due to a flat tire and fights to get back into contention. On lap 358, he's caught by Gordon.
Red Rubble, it's Geoff Bodine.
Coming off turn 2. Oh, man, he hit a ton.
Now the race back to the caution flag.
This is where Rusty Wallace will get a lap back.
Yep.
Yeah, Rusty Wallace was in front. Got that lap back.
Well, Geoff Bodine, the driver, have to go back and explain to Geoff Bodine, the car owner, what happened.
Of course, I need to say hi to Kathy. Matt Barry, I'm okay, guys. Got a good car. It held up, the seat held up. I learned from my brother the other day. I put another headrest in and didn't have any problems. So I was trying to make a lap up. You know, we had a flat tire, a lot of tire problems today. This baby's fast out here. The tires are tearing up a little bit. And I was just trying to make my lap up, but I could see I wasn't going to do it. Schrader was pretty quick, but I wanted to ride there just in case something happened. And Geoff came up behind me, and he was a little quicker, so I kind of slid up here to let him go by. And, you know, it's really tough off this corner. It's so rough and bumpy. You know, he probably got in the throttle, and the thing chattered out. And, you know, he ran into me, obviously, and spun me around, hit the wall. It's really a shame. The car was running good. We appreciate the Family Channel sponsoring us. They're going to be on the car some more this year. Still looking for that big sponsorship for next year, though, guys. So.
Do you feel like that penalty's justified?
Well, you know, I didn't see it. NASCAR saw it. They're watching the whole thing. They usually do the right thing. So if they feel he deserved it, I guess he did. But, you know, like I said, it's just a tough place to pass. Probably got in the gas, it chattered up, and he hit me.
Gordon will be handed a 5-lap penalty. That is until crew chief Ray Evernham appeals it under the ensuing caution. This will be the last race the Underbird ever enters. That fall, retired police officer Larry Bean will buy the car's remnants. With the team's help, the car is rebuilt back to its 1992 glory in 1996. Another crash involves Rick Wilson, who has endured a miserable season as the driver to follow Richard Petty into the STP Pontiac. On lap 119, this crash leaves Wilson with injured ribs. Already 26th in driver points, the Petty team is unwilling to have a relief driver on hand. If Wilson is unable to go the full distance the next week at Martinsville, they'd rather hire someone who could do it instead. And so on September 20th, crew chief Robbie Loomis gets a hold of Jimmy Hensley. At the end of qualifying for the Goodies 500 at Martinsville, 2 iconic numbers stand atop the leaderboard.
A couple of very familiar numbers here leading the pack at Martinsville for today's Goodies 500. The 28 and the 7 car start 1 and 2 respectively. Now this marks the 4th race for Ernie Irvan in the Robert Yates Ford. And already they have a pole. And you know, earlier this year, Ernie and Davey Allison were talking. Davey told him that it was a great team. At that point in time, Ernie had no idea he'd be able to find out firsthand just how good they really are. This is the second race in the number 7 Ford for Geoff Bodine since taking over his own team. Geoff won this race last year and knows that a win here today could help get him on the Winter Circle program for next year.
When the green flag drops, Bodine gets the jump on Irvan. Meanwhile, Hensley in the STP car finds trouble.
Here's for fourth position, and Darrell Waltrip
Gets banged by Sterling Marlin, and around he goes right in front of several cars. Jimmy Hedges made contact, so has Bobby Labonte.
And several cars back behind them got together as well.
Lake Speed spun, so did Derek Cope. They're pulling away. Waltrip now begins to move his car. Jimmy Hensley in the 44 begins to move away. Bobby Labonte is about the only car that is not pulled away from the incident, but we have a lot of damaged race cars.
Jimmy Hedges got a broken radiator in his car. See, all that smoke coming out of his car, that's water getting on the exhaust pipe. So he's got a long stay in the garage area to have the car repaired before he get back. What a tough break for Hensley and for Darrell Waltrip.
Robbie Loomis and the crew get Hensley out again to complete 292 laps, but with record low attrition, he remains in last place. With Rick Wilson set to return the next week, Hensley's only Cup start for the Petties is over, yet it's a moment likewise commemorated in diecast, this by Racing Champions. Bodine leads the first 32 laps, after which Irvin leads 402 of the remaining 468. It's the first win for the Robert Yates team since Richmond, and gives Irvin the rare distinction of winning Cup races for multiple teams in the same season. For Bodine, that moment will have to come another day. His car overheats as he fights to stay on the lead lap. He holds on to 9th in the final laps, only to spin off turn 2 and drop to 14th, 3 laps down. On October 2nd in Milwaukee, Gerald and Thelma Kulwicki preside over the dedication of Alan Kulwicki Park, a 28-acre facility. 30 race cars are brought in for the festivities, and a fundraiser is held to build a 7-field Little League baseball complex in the park. The next day, the Winston Cup Series returns to North Wilkesboro, side of the Kulwicki team's return to competition back in the spring. Geoff Bodine's white Ford has new sponsorship. The Family Channel had just bought the Carolina Opry and Dixie Jubilee in Myrtle Beach, and choose this race to promote them both. Bodine rolls off 23rd, but his race is ruined mere moments after the green flag drops.
Oh, and problems here at the very beginning. Jeff Gordon and
Jeff Bodine.
Jeff Bodine is also involved. Also,
Derek Cope, but he backs up and pulls away. And Lake Speed was involved a little farther down the racetrack.
Luck. None of it. None at all.
Not lately, no. I don't know what happened out there. It was a really slow start. I guess some of the guys in the middle took off before the guys in the front or whatever, and everyone jammed up. It's funny. Todd and I were just talking before the start. I said, make sure you got brakes. And he needed them, but he ran into me, but it wasn't his fault. You know, just a pileup, kind of like you see in a city streets at rush hour. You know, one guy stops and the rest run into him, but I can't believe it. This is really tough. And yeah, I came into the garage, got out of the car, came in here, was going to take my stuff off, and I said, hey, that's my car out there. I better go back and check on it. I had to go hook it up so they wouldn't destroy it, but they're working on it back here. Maybe we can get back out and at least ride around for the Family Channel and all the race fans here.
What about next year? Family Channel has been discussed. Sponsors lined up already, or are you still looking?
No, we're still looking. I'm glad you brought that up. No, the Family Channel looks like they're going somewhere else. They're helping us this year, and we appreciate what they're doing. But we're talking a lot of good folks. We have a great team here. You know, this kind of thing can happen to anybody, but why me, right? But, you know, things are going to get better.
Paul Andrews and the crew piece the car back together, but only climb to 31st in the running order before they drop out with handling issues. Just as the track had in May, Kulwicki is presented many honors in Charlotte. On October 6th, he's inducted into the track's Court of Legends, located in front of the Smith Tower. As Gerald Kulwicki accepts the award, he is carrying a branding iron made by Pete Jackson, a fabricator on the Kulwicki team. The iron is in the shape of Alan's autograph, which Gerald presses into the wet cement. His stepmother Thelma then presses an imprint of Alan's racing shoe beside the signature. The next day, Hooters announces that they'll be sponsoring Loy Allen Jr. in 1994 in a bid for Rookie of the Year. Unable to buy Kulwicki's team, the plan is to continue campaigning his family's number 37. We're an inexperienced team with an inexperienced driver, says Allen. I'm looking forward to next year and a real good run for the rookie title. In second-round qualifying, the hopeful rookie comes up short of making Sunday's race. A new rule change presents a set of challenges for the field. In both this race and the Atlanta finale, the front air dam is raised from 3 inches to 5.5. the roof height from 50.5 inches to 51, and the rear deck spoilers are lowered from 6.5 inches to 5. It took a lot of time to work it all out in some extensive testing, says Paul Andrews. It really wasn't that big a deal, but it was a little struggle to get it right. Our big concern is how it'll run in traffic. We still don't know that, but we hope to find out in that first practice tomorrow on October 7th. We know this is what it'll do by itself, but what will they do in practice with a lot of traffic around? Charlotte sells out all 25,000 of their commemorative tickets for Winston Pole Night, which each commemorate Alan Kulwicki's track records set a year earlier at 179.027 miles per hour. In qualifying, Bodine gets an early draw.
But here comes Geoff Bodine in the Family Channel Thunderbird, car number 7, making his 13th attempt here at the Charlotte Motor Speedway in the 500. Remember, he won this race back in 91 for Junior Johnson.
Ken, it's his 13th attempt here at Charlotte, but this is his first time in his own race car. He's purchased this team, and he's driving his own race car now, and his shop is about 2 blocks from here, so they really want to get a good run in right here at home.
And remember that car number 7 coming to the line, carrying that number with Alan Kulwicki at the controls a year ago, set the track record at 179 plus.
Of course, see, look like all the cars are really clicking the sparks through the corner, and that's usually the tailpipes on the right side dragging. So.
Records 179.027.
Yeah, that'll give you a good indication of how much travel is involved with these cars. Total ground clearance anywhere on the car is like 5 inches, and the car is traveling so far that it's even hitting the line for that much.
Joe Gibbs looking on. You can see him up there with the winner of the 500, Jarrett.
Now that's a pretty sporty one right there.
177.474. So these changes in the aerodynamics really have had that much effect. Second lap being attempted, and you can see Bodine last lap with a fistful of race car fighting that machine through 3 and 4.
They're supposed to go faster in a straight line with less spoiler. Oh, looked like he lost the motor just as he went across.
Came to the line. Let's see what he did in that second lap. 36.37, not as quick. 177.474, and there's your pole sitter for the moment. It's Geoff Bodine. We'll be back with more from Charlotte after these messages.
Bodine will start third as rookie Jeff Gordon earns the first of his 81 career poles with a speed of 177.684. Kulwicki's track record stands for another year. In the race, Gordon finishes 5th, while Bodine falls to 18th on lap 74 when he loses his first of 3 laps. He climbs to 13th by the finish. Outside pole sitter Ernie Irvan dominates for a second time in 3 races. Reminiscent of some of Davey Allison's runs at the track, the Haviland Ford paces the field for 328 of 334 laps and wins by nearly 2 seconds. 3 days after the race, Kulwicki becomes the first motorsports athlete inducted into the Wisconsin Hall of Fame. The gesture inspires the only standing ovation of the night's ceremonies. Alan wanted to win more than anything, says Kyle Petty, who's among the attendees. You could see it in his eyes. But he was also as great a human being as anyone here is ever going to meet. And it hurts me that as he's being inducted, he's not sitting here with us tonight. All he wanted to be was a great champion, and he was one of the greatest racing has ever had. Gerald and Thelma Kulwicki accept the plaque and add it to their son's still-growing list of awards. The fall race at Rockingham is preceded by the Pit Crew Championship. In it, the Paul Andrews-led crew ranks just 26th of the 31 entrants. In qualifying for the AC Delco 500, Bodine times in 19th and comes home 10th, his first top 10 finish since taking over driving duties from Jimmy Hensley, and Bodine's best since he followed Hensley to the finish line at Bristol 2 months earlier. Loy Allen Jr. makes the race, but on lap 9 breaks loose in front of Kenny Wallace entering turn 4. Allen clobbers the wall and finishes in last place. He's yet to finish better than 26th in any of his first few Winston Cup starts. Phoenix sees Jimmy Hensley pick up a ride with Morgan McClure Motorsports, making him already the 3rd different driver to run the Kodak Film Chevrolet since Ernie Irvan left the team in September. This will be the 4th and final team he will drive for in 1993. He finishes just 32nd at Phoenix, out with handling issues in the closing laps, then takes 25th in the Atlanta finale. By then, he lands a new ride for 1994, the Radius Motorsports entry, previously driven by Ted Musgrave. Over the offseason, the media honors Hensley as the fourth quarter nominee for the Maxwell House Motorsports Spirit Award, recognizing him for his work with the Kulwicki team. "We did the best we could under the circumstances, and I thought we did a pretty good job," says Hensley. "It's really an honor to be nominated for this award." Since 1991, TriStar Motorsports had carried sponsorship on the number 68 from Country Time Lemonade, the car with which Bobby Hamilton won Rookie of the Year. But at Phoenix, Country Time announces they will move to Phoenix Racing to sponsor Neil Bonnet for his planned return to racing in 1994, set to begin at Daytona. For Sunday's race, Loy Allen Jr. is swapped in for TriStar's driver Greg Sachs in what is said to be just a one-race deal, and he finishes 26th. But it will later be revealed that TriStar will merge with Allen's family team, Allen Motorsports Incorporated. TriStar will switch car numbers from the 68 to the 19, with sponsorship from Hooters. After the upcoming finale at Atlanta, the Allen family's number 37 cars, originally built by Robert Yates, go up for sale. One of them is purchased by the newly crowned Goodies Dash Series champion, who plans to make his first Winston Cup attempt in the Daytona 500, Rodney Orr. Geoff Bodine qualifies 19th at Phoenix, but after just 14 laps, contact from Hut Strickland makes it another short afternoon.
Geoff Bodine got the worst of it.
Yeah, he's got a lot of damage. He's trying to get himself out of the racing groove with the traffic coming. Good job, just backed it down out of the way.
Short day of racing and a long flight home.
Boy, I'm telling you, he is not a happy camper. Look at this.
I got a feeling he's going to go out there and talk to somebody when they come by.
It's the first time the number 7 has finished last in a Cup race since Alan Kulwicki's only last-place run at Darlington in 1987. It's also the last time the number will finish in that spot until 1996. The team loads up, and 2 weeks later arrives at the season finale at Atlanta, where memories of the close championship of a year earlier burn brighter than ever. Rusty Wallace wins the race, his 10th of the season, but by then Dale Earnhardt has already locked up his 6th Winston Cup. Both take a Polish victory lap in honor of Alan Kulwicki and Davey Allison. As for Bodine, he qualifies 11th, but crashes in practice and is sent to a backup. This car carries multiple onboard cameras, including a rear-facing one on the roof. But after 28 laps, the result is no different from Phoenix.
Geoff Bodine is involved in a crash along with Schrader and Spencer.
And back farther into pack, Jimmy Horton has spun down to the inside.
Boy, it has been a tough weekend for the Bodines. Geoff crashed yesterday. Now he's involved in a crash today. Todd was injured yesterday. Brett has crashed today. And boy, oh boy, it looks like that Geoff is going to unstrap himself and get out of the car under his own power.
Yeah, I'm okay. Brett's okay. My mother and father back home, I know they're going crazy. Todd's okay. They're keeping him, looking at him a little bit more, but he's fine. Matt and Barry, they're back home watching. I'm fine. You know, Kathy and I, we don't know what's happening here. Things started out so good when we bought this team. We won the Sears Point race in the 15 car, and really thought this was going to work out just fine. It will eventually, but boy, this has been tough here lately. We appreciate what the Family Channel's done for us since we've taken the team over. They've really helped us. We wish we could have run better and won some races for them. But we're still looking for a sponsor for next year. We're not giving up. We don't have one, but we're still in business. All those rumors about we're closing the doors, we're not closing the doors, even after a weekend like this. We love this sport. We're in it for keeps. So this is racing, I guess, but boy, it's been hard here lately.
Sure has, and hopefully something will develop for them so that we can see them with that car painted up with a full sponsorship at Daytona in February.
All this comes the same weekend the Family Channel announces they're leaving to sponsor Ted Musgrave at Roush. It's been a long and brutal year, but at the headquarters for what is now Geoff Bodine Racing, all eyes turn toward the future. On December 2nd, 1993, Montgomery Ward becomes the first associate sponsor to join Bodine for 94. The department store joins thanks to Bodine's decision to run Hoosier tires, which the store sells to consumers. Bodine is already the third driver to commit to the brand, joining brothers Ward and Jeff Burton, who will compete for Rookie of the Year against Loy Allen. 17 days later, Exide Batteries, another Montgomery Ward product, signs a one-year agreement as primary sponsor. The The team comes up with a vibrant new paint scheme that perfectly combines the team's past with its present. It's basically an inverted version of the Hooters scheme, the upper half black instead of white, the door numbers white instead of brown. The lower half transitions from blue to pink, reminiscent of the gradient shade used on the old Xerox scheme in 1989 and 1990. Even the team uniforms resemble the crew's championship attire from 1992, the orange and brown striping replaced with pink and black. Before long, it's time to see how fast the car will go.
Geoff Bodine locked onto the rear bumper of Kenny Schrader. Sterling Marlin, the number 4, coming back for
Here
third.
he comes. There was some sand in that bag, wasn't it?
Bodine takes his bobsled into turn 3.
Indeed.
Sterling Marlin will battle Schrader for second. It's Bodine off the corner to win it. Geoff Bodine, the 86 500 winner, will win it, and for second.
A dream of mine to pay respect to the late Alan Kulwicki and driving this car to a victory and being able to do a Polish victory lap, and just really crazy how things, came full circle there in that moment. It was pretty emotional for me. Just, he beat Dad back in the day, and here we are